You that join me. Those of you who know me know they usually do that. So I do have a PowerPoint for y'all today, but don't worry, I'm not just going to read off of said PowerPoint. Hopefully you find it a little more entertaining than that. So I titled this software for cyborgs. It's kind of give you a sense of the way I've been thinking about the whole thing. In fact, one of the assumptions I work under is sort of maybe in a more metaphorical sense, but that we're all cyborgs now. Those of you who are in humanities and maybe know the work of Donna Haraway, of course, I'm like influenced by her. And in a very real way, some of us are in fact cyborgs, right? But in a metaphorical way, we all are. We rely on these machines in a lot of ways. And I'm starting to come to think of AI as maybe like a software update for us cyborgs. And so LLMs, I purposely use that term instead of AAI to really drive home the language model aspect of it. I find in my classes I repeat over and over, it's not a knowledge model, it's a language model. It's not a knowledge model, it's a language model. I repeat that a lot, and I think it's starting to set in for my students. As far as feedback loops and personal area networks, I really wanted to give you guys a sense of a couple metaphors or guiding metaphors that I've been meditating upon that have guided the way I'm thinking about the design for my assignments and my course. I'm going to share a few of those assignments with y'all as well as we look at it. A little bit more about me. I am Dr. Rich Paul Cooper, as much being shared. I'm a senior lecturer in English. That means I teach a lot of writing courses. Today, I'm probably going to talk to you about what I'm doing in English 104 and English 203, which are core curriculum writing courses. I teach and write sci-fi and fantasy. And so in those classes, I have used some elements of AI, especially digital art. We've had a lot of great stuff going on with that. But that's not exactly what I'm going to talk to you about today. But I do want you to know that I have a science fiction background. I'd actually taught a class on posthumanism, a 104 class on posthumanism for a long time. And I've been talking about these chatbots for a long time. And even remember talking to students about Tay, Microsoft's Tay on Twitter. And I don't know if you guys remember Tay on Twitter, but it quickly devolved into a cesspool of anti-Semitism and racial hate. Anyway, we've come a long way. Uh, okay, so a few things. I'm not going to talk about literature, but I did kind of want to point out in literature a few different, like out there, I think, sort of takes on this. So on the left there is Christian Book, who is a very respected poet, an experimental poet. His book was used to train AI, and unlike many authors who actually have taken up lawsuits against ChatGPT, for example, because of this list, you can see he really embraces it. He sees it as training the minds of our futurist machines, which are like our children. And on the right side there, you can see, of course, famed American poet Charles Bernstein, who just recently released what he's calling a human assisted AI book of poetry. And so even though I'm not talking about literature, these kinds of things are happening in literature, maybe even creative writing courses as well. One other thing I wanted to give you guys a sense of what I'm doing. This is we're doing design-based research, and so I'm going to plug Ideate Community and CTE here. I've been working with the learning scientists there, and we collect data. We're going to collect data. This is our first iteration of using AI in the course. And what we hope to do is, one, of course, be able to provide data to other people about what's happening with these assignments, but also be able to think about redesigns and how we can keep improving them. And so that's a bit of a caveat to say right now, some of my assignments, they're in the a sort of first iteration design stage. So take that in mind. But this is a guiding principle. Again, feedback loops. I've been thinking about feedback loops quite a bit. So, oh, too far. Some of you might know this. Some of you might know this better than me if you're actually in STEM. I was thinking about feedback loops, and I was thinking about the types of prompts we use. And I started thinking about actually an analog, and I found some analog images. This is a servo control for a remote control car. It's a one-way movement. It doesn't get a lot of feedback. And then the metaphors I was thinking about things, this made me think of generative prompts. In fact, early on, I worked under the assumption that, like, I think if you're using AI generatively and generatively alone, that you're probably not using it in the correct or the most maximalized way of using it, because I feel like those are sort of one-way commands. And that works with maybe like a traditional kind of program, which I learned along with, well, I lost my with the Ideate people. I actually went to a conference recently in New York. This came from some people who teach computer sciences and teach programming, and they were thinking about how to come up with a new model, a new metaphor perhaps for machine learning education and computer programming and sciences. And students come in again with this model you see in front of you, which is the traditional model, which looks a lot like that server I just showed you. It's really like a one-way direction here, and you're not really getting those iterative feedbacks that define machine learning, but also define design-based research and design-based learning. And so I started thinking more. There are, of course, many different kinds of feedback controls. This is a semi-closed one, which actually gives you an encoder cable going back, which gives a little bit of bad direction back to the controller. And here, if you're moving now in this metaphor, you're entering the space where you're starting to co-write. Well, I started to ask the question, who trains who? Because in the previous one, you're just sort of giving commands. You've abdicated your control to the machine. But in this metaphor, I thought more of a relationship you're cultivating with the thing. You're actually like being a cyborg in this moment. And so with that in mind, I started thinking about ways we could do that. And the main way, I didn't make this up. I know it's not novel. I've heard a lot of people say that is for peer review. I don't ever want to do peer review the normal way. We do a lot of peer review in writing classes, and the normal way is to have them circulated among each other and answer the questions. I really kind of polled them about it, and in general, they don't find a lot of value in it. The students, they don't like doing it. They don't understand why we assign it, and they just don't like the feedback. Well, I said, okay, well, let's see if we can use this feedback. They give it text. Remember, it's a language model. If you're asking it to generate things, it's going to hallucinate and make things up. There's always going to be a degree of probability in what it does. It's going to make things up. But if you give it a chunk of text, it's then acting at its sort of maximal. That maximal still has a degree of probability involved and needs human involvement, but that's when it's acting at its best. So we give it a chunk of text, a draft, and then we get these feedback loops going with these questions, which in the original iteration, I sort of wrote these questions. Students since have come to me and said, this is the best peer review feedback I've ever gotten on an assignment. And I do believe it shows in the quality of the essays. I just read an article this morning about scientists using it to peer review their own articles because they say it's giving better feedback and advice than the actual peers. So something to consider. So this is something I'm doing, feedback, peer review, any type of feedback, give it a chunk of text, give it something it knows how to work with. And so in this sense, now we're getting, this is still sort of our computer science people, now we're in iterative learning. It's not a one-way thing. Your student is the evaluator here. We've got a feedback loop building, and then it's a feedback loop that we can reiterate as many times as necessary and very quickly, in fact. And so I'm thinking more in this line in a lot of my assignments. So how do we get this model, this sort of metaphor going? And of course, to think about, there's the next step. There's one final server here that I hadn't quite figured out. This feedback cable gives you greater control over the whole thing. And I was perhaps trying to conceptualize a role for the professor in this. And so I modified that previous image a little bit. And I was just sort of brainstorming this. I don't know how I think about it, but I was thinking about the instructor just as like a calibrator collaborator in this instance, calibrating the input into the model, but collaborating with the evaluators, the students, to create documents. Thinking about it in that way led me to a different way of evolving this thing, that rather than me giving them questions for peer review, I actually had them work in groups in the class in a Google document to create a document full, and these are some of the questions they created, full of documents, which we then reviewed as a class and talked about, but then are going to, well, we have reiterated those again. And so the students are actually making the rubrics, making these prompts to ask about their writing, which then happens separately. I do have, sometimes students, you can tell when they've tried to pass off an entirely generated essay on you. But I have like strict requirements about I don't know, it's English courses, so I can do this, but originality of perspective and voice, and those stringent sort of requirements there kind of weed out any desire to use it for just straight generative things. And I don't have to tell you guys if they just generate things, it's usually bad writing, full of errors, full of mistakes. It still requires a lot of work to get in there. I'm thinking instead about this feedback loop. So I got this idea about feedback loops on this conference, but then I also met a random weirdo in Central Park, and I thought, why not let this random weirdo have a little bit of the stage too? And he got to talking to me. We were talking about AI, about local area networks, and reminded me, of course, I don't know about you guys, but when I was an undergraduate, in our dorm room, we would set up local area networks to bring together different computers so people could have LAN parties and do gaming. But this sort of diagram lets you know there's sort of body area networks, personal area network, where you see I put my little cyborg guy. And I put this here because I think it's useful to help students kind of get perspective on where this software upgrade is happening. And it's happening, I think, at this personal area network level. It's not going to connect directly to the world area network or your regional area network or your metro or your campus area network. You still have to do the work to reach it through these different networks, but it can improve how you're operating there just in your personal area network. And so, oh no, I lost my, there it is. Oh, I thought I lost it. So thinking about personal area network, this is, of course, a big part of your personal area network. PDAs, maybe not so much anymore. There are probably other items that fit into there. And I'm just thinking of it, it's a software upgrade to your personal area network. That's all it is. You still have to do the work of getting it out to the wireless area network. And so that made me thinking about the classroom space as how we create networked cyborg classrooms. You see, I even put the professor there as a node in the cyborg. We're all sort of cyborgs now. And how to sort of conceive of this network space, which we can then connect to, of course, these other networks that they are part of. And so, I don't know if I took up too much time. Perfect. That's sort of how I've been thinking about it. It's a little more theoretical metaphors, and I've been thinking about those. The final ones, of course, that I put there, the things about the LAN and the personal area networks. I'm thinking about these as we move into future iterations of how we might improve our design. But at the moment, we're waiting on the data before we do that. Thank you.